anniversary. Good evening and welcome to this edition of the Fourth Estate. My name is Charles Mwangushampagi, and tonight, on Uganda's 54th independence anniversary, we'll be trying to ask the question: have we lived up to expectations as a country? Have we lived the dream of independence that we celebrated today? Now, the national celebrations were held earlier today in Luka district in the Busoga sub-region, and President Yoweri Museveni, the chief celebrant at there's a debate actually whether that was a celebration or a commemoration, or whether many Ugandans should be celebrating or commemorating Independence Day, but whichever way you look at it. Some of the key questions to ask is: how far have we moved on the journey of achieving real independence in the economics, in the politics, as a society, or as a people? Tonight, let me introduce the guests that I have on the show. Missing in action, of course, is Honor Peter Ekomoloit. He celebrated his independence in Asalatap village in Amuria, Teso sub-region. Let me introduce the man I dragged all the way from Kasese. Robert Centenary is Member of Parliament representing Kasese Municipality. You're most welcome.
Good evening, viewers.
Ivan Okoda, apart from being a regular guest on the show, he's a young man. He's almost halfway, not less than halfway, almost halfway Uganda's entire independence life. He's a journalist working with the Daily Monitor and a student of Last Macquarie University. Ivan, nice to have you back on the show.
Thank you, Charles. Profoundly humbled to be part of the panel discussing on this beautiful day.
Mwambusi Anderson is an academic teacher at Macquarie University. Very nice to have you.
Good evening, viewers.
And among those Ugandans who would be marking, who would have a correlation with 54 years of independence, I think on the panel you are the only one who represents those who might have been around or who were close.
I think so.
You think so? Very nice to have you. And social critic and commentator, Frank Gashumba. Very nice to have you, Frank.
Yeah, good evening, viewers.
Let me put a very broad question to Ivan Okoda. Being the youngest Ugandan on the show tonight, what to you does 54 years of an independent country represent? How do you feel about this being 54th independence?
Thank you, Charles. I think a bit about it is I'm about 22. I'll be making 23 at the end of this month. So, like President Museveni, who in 1962, when Uganda got independence, I was a student, was in Terry at the time in Senior 1, and he says he was politically conscious. I have the benefit of being politically conscious, and that means I keep my tabs on the political developments in the country. And so I spent the better of today essentially trying to refresh myself and my mind with the picture that has been painted of a Uganda by three men. One is Dr. Palomito Nobote. I was reading an article that was published and attributed to him in the Uganda Argus on 9th October 1962, where he outlines in a very persuasive and rather touching article the trajectory of the Uganda that we want. And the first fundamental point that he makes in that article is unity, where he says we must subordinate the narrow ambitions of a tribe, of a sect, of a political party, and have the interests of Uganda first. And then he goes on to build his points on the need to have an efficient government, an efficient civil service, the need to have a country that serves and allows those that have the interests of this country at heart and gives them the space, the platform, to be able to be the best they can and to contribute to national development. And fast forward 2016, October 9th, I also did read a speech delivered by Mr. Yoweri Museveni, where he outlines on the speech that he gave today the Uganda that we are working and should be working to achieve. And in that speech, a total contrast from the 1986 speech, January 26th, and a contrast from his other writings such as Africa's Problem and what he thought it is, in the other writings, extremely dry on the governance question, but quite rich on the economics. About the speech of 1962 was actually rich as well on the economics. but considers national unity and the identity of that which makes us Ugandans as the #1 building block for Uganda. Then also read Dr. Kiza Besitia's speech that has been circulating on social media. And in that speech also very rich on the governance challenges, which if not addressed will essentially keep us stuck and asking the kind of questions that the Milton Obotes, and other forefathers and mothers of this nation asked when they were fighting for independence. So essentially, I think for me the fulcrum of those three speeches is that we are still a country that has a very long journey to go, to the extent that we've not been able, for example, to address that which Obote thought was the most important point. Before anything else, national unity, national identity. What is it that makes us Ugandans? What is it that identifies us? What is it that we can be proud of?
As Ugandans.
As Ugandans, yes.
Centenary Robert, you represent us in Parliament, and you come from an area that's been a flashpoint for a lot of skirmishes related to this important question of unity.
Yep.
Underlying it is the question of those economic aspirations and social aspirations. But Kasese and the Rwenzori sub-region is not unique in any way, because you saw the fight over Zoka Forest in West Nile is between two different tribes over the creation of a district and where the district boundary should be, and people are going up in arms against one another. You take it to eastern Uganda, you find the same situation, and even in central Uganda. There are these. From your perspective as a member of parliament, this 54 years of an independent country, does it represent where this country should be 54 years after we gained self-governance, and why? If we haven't?
Thank you. If I have to concentrate on the Rwenzori region, as you said it, I think we have a long way to achieve the desired independence that we thought, or our forefathers thought, was desirable for this country. Reasons being, this country as it is being micromanaged in terms of tribal sentiments, you know, being fragmented into smaller administrative units which don't necessarily even make sense to Ugandans in terms of the service delivery that Ugandans thought that fragmentation would translate into. Instead, I think it increases the administrative costs, which also in turn affects the welfare of the citizens. And you know, independence means self-governance and also improving the welfare. We thought that if we get out of the hands of the colonialists, the whites, as it was, then our life would be much, much better than it is or it should be now. I'll give you a scenario, infrastructure, not even necessarily political. I do not see any sense in government, for instance, bringing contractors all the way from China to come and do the kind of work they did on Fort Porto Kasese Road. I think a local contractor would have done much better than that. Even the road that they removed to fix a new one was much more stronger than the one they put, which did not even last the period of construction, because by the time they handed it over, it was already wearing out. Now, I think that was a raw deal. Yes, and now we are getting from the hands of one white man to a Chinese who is coming to give us shoddy work. You know?
But is it
recently
an indictment on us as a people? It can't be narrowed down to simpler government. I think it's an indictment on us as a people.
The people of Kabarole actually protested. They did go and protest on the road, and nothing was done.
Yes, my question is,
so,
if we haven't in 54 years built capacity to be able to have the local contractors you're talking about, to be able to marshal the necessary efforts to deliver a better road or some of these infrastructure projects, it's beyond simple government, isn't it?
I do not think we don't have the local capacity, because I know there are quite a number of local companies that have been listed by government. We used to have Zimwe Construction Company, which was really powerful, Mugoya Construction Company, and others. In Kasese, we have Kasese Nail and Wood. They've been doing quite a good job on roads. So I think it's about, like it has been, that if we need to go to the middle income level, we need to promote the local capacity, buy Uganda, build Uganda. And I also think that we should contract Ugandans to be able to fix our roads.
I'll come back to you on the question of the economy in a bit. Let me first come to Mwambusi and Devesa. Have we lived the dream? Have we lived the promise?
What was the dream?
You're the historian.
You know, you could be there without a dream, and then you claim you had a dream, because I don't remember quite very well whether that dream was clearly put, as you find in other countries. They have got their Declaration of Independence dreams very clearly put. Okay, there was the slogan of poverty, overcoming poverty, disease, and ignorance. But it seems the dream has not been owned by all Ugandans. So independence in Uganda has not meant the same thing to everyone. But generally, idea, of course, independence presupposes that we were under the control of another power in the African context. And this one was overcome 54 years ago. But overcome for what? What were they controlling? So those who were controlling us, the British in this case, who had been here for officially 68 years, they went away, but they had been controlling the political space for all that time. Now it was the Africans or the citizens. But to come from colonialism to independence presupposes that in colonialism you were a subject. In independence, you are a citizen. That is the presupposition, that is the ideal situation. So the question we should be asking ourselves is, are we citizens or are we subjects? In what determines who is a citizen and who is a subject? In independence, when you are a citizen, it means you are actively participating in the public affairs of your country, and you are enjoying the freedoms that allow you to participate in the governance and shaping the future, contrary to colonialism. Now I put this question to all Ugandans. Are we effectively allowed space to participate and shape the future of Uganda? That is one question. Another question would be independence and economic independence. Are we economically independent? That is another question, but I am afraid there are some respects in which we are independent, but in much of the respects we are not, because, for example, today as we talk, contrary to what some people actually believe, when you consider agriculture, the agriculture sector contributes less than 23% to GDP. The share of agriculture to GDP is about 21 to 22%. The largest share, about 50%, is services, the services sector. But who controls the services sector? It is foreign capital. You are talking about these telecommunication companies, petro and oil companies, the hotels that you see around here in town. Those services are owned by foreign capital. So how independent are the Africans? Even if you talk about, I have heard people talk about our budget, that we are now funding it by, is it 80%?
Yeah, I think it dropped a little bit to
yeah, but
79%.
Even if it was around that, you very well know that Uganda Revenue Authority collects about half of our total budget of that 80%. The rest is actually contributed by domestic borrowing. But where is the government borrowing from? It is borrowing from foreign banks. So even at that level, we are not yet economically independent. And socially, we are also, to a certain extent, not so independent as we would have wanted to be. You look at our mentalities, for example. We are still admiring the foreign dress codes, foreign speeches, and you find that there is less pride among the Ugandan Africans. So, yes, we have a flag independence, we have the flags, we have African presidents, but in real sense of the word, we are not yet there. It is not yet Uhuru, as the father of Odinga said, and we need to do something to make sure that at least we are liberated, even psychologically, because otherwise, even psychologically, we still are controlled, and therefore, this independence needs to be reflected on. I think today, or such a commemoration, as you put it, should be a day of reflecting on what is the meaning of independence and how should we correct those things that went wrong. Otherwise, we shall continue dancing around, and you see our economies are still doing very poorly. Some people don't know the statistics, by the way, the figures of how we are doing even economically. Uganda is just, the GDP of Uganda is about 26 billion US dollars. That is half even of what Facebook, the owner of Facebook, has. The GDP per capita is around 700. That is not something to talk about. So, our export earnings now is around 240 US dollars. That is not something to talk about.
The question I want to put, whose responsibility is it to fix those things?
Ugandans.
Yes. So if Ugandans are not fixing them, then for how long will this country read from the Book of Lamentation?
You see, the
which you have been listing, the Lamentation.
You see, the country, especially governing the country, has two aspects, if we can borrow the concept of economics, or from economics. There is a supply and demand of politics. The supply is the state, the governors, and the demand is the population. So it has been more of the supply and less of the demand. In other words, civic competence in this country is still at a very low level. We have not done enough to demand to participate in politics and to hold those in power accountable. But also the suppliers have not allowed enough space for the citizens to participate. They have almost kept them as subjects and not citizens. And therefore, we need to balance the supply and demand of politics in the coming days of our independence.
I'm keen to bring in Frank Gashumba into this. Frank, you listen to Ndebesa.
Yes.
Try to outline what the problem is. But that's about what we do. We outline what the problem is. We don't assign solutions to this problem. For 54 years, we clamored for independence, if we did. If you compare with what happened in the rest of the East African region, for example, especially with our neighbors in Kenya, who had an all drawn-out war in the Mau Mau rebellion to fight for the independence. Uganda appears to have gotten independence on a silver platter. And people ask, were we actually ready to be independent? And since we got independence, have we made any difference with this independence? Has it made any difference to us?
First, for me, I learned about the independence celebrations today after you inviting me here. And surprisingly, I spent the whole day deep in Gomba, meaning from Kampala up to Gomba, there was nothing like a celebration along the way. Meaning that the celebrations we are talking about, it's about the political leaders who are in Luka and Busoga.
That wouldn't be Frank Gashumba.
I'm coming.
No, that wouldn't be Frank Gashumba.
It's very important. It's very important.
You need to be honest with our viewers.
No. I'm telling you
that you didn't know that today was independence?
Yes.
Tell
me one pick that is training on the social media to do the independence celebrations.
There's one of Badru Chigunu receiving a medal from the president.
And another one?
She's a message and his clashes with the police.
Let me tell you, Charles.
Yes.
The question would be, should we allow colonists to come back to Uganda and govern this country again? To me, the answer is yes. The answer is yes. I was watching a documentary. Professor,
that is defeatism.
I know, Professor, you won't agree with me there. That one, I'm ready for that. I was watching a documentary, and it's actually saturating on the social media. The way Africa is being administered, it will take us 2,722 years.
By whose calculation?
By those who govern us.
Who are those?
The white man. Because they know.
2,700 years
Yes,
to do what?
yes, to
Get
be
what?
where they are. You are talking of independence. Professor, he heated about it. Look at our economy, Uganda. Look at the entire banking sector. It's foreign. From Standard Chartered to Stanbic, from Stanbic to Bank of Baroda, from Bank of Baroda
Barclays.
to Citibank. Now, even Exim Bank from China is here. Look at it in these big projects in Uganda. Who is doing them? The Chinese. Even the small roundabout at Fairway here. And we have engineers from Makerere University. Let's look at international airlines flying to Uganda. They are all foreign. So what independence are we talking about? There is no independence in Uganda. The president last week said, I think this week, that this must stop, this business of buying products from China. He's forgetting that even the microphone he's using is imported from where? From China. To me, as Frank Agashumba and someone who interacts with the ordinary people, I would tell you it was even wrong. It was wrong.
You have 5 Ugandans seated on TV now,
Yes,
on NTV.
yes.
You had thousands celebrating or attending the commemoration in Luka.
Thousands.
UPC had its own celebration
Uh-huh.
in Akibwa Stadium
Uh-huh.
in Lira
Uh-huh.
with a band.
Uh-huh.
You have all these people across the country,
Uh-huh.
and we're all kicking the ball and sending it to someone else
Uh-huh.
to try and solve the problem. Everyone talks about what the problem is.
Uh-huh.
No one tries to find solutions.
No, no.
Can we come back to that and try to answer that question? Because I mean, if we fail to live up to the expectation of independence,
Yes.
who do we expect to take us there? After a short break, we'll be answering that question.
9:30.
Jinro, good times, worth protecting.
Tonight is our 10th anniversary, and your dad, he bought me these lovely dresses, and he's taking me out for dinner. Okay, I am so late for work. All right, see you later. Okay.
I know exactly what to do.
So how do I look, girls?
Just like a star.
Mukwano Star White Laundry Bar Soap makes you the star you are.
You know what they say about girls. Who cries more? Girls.
When you trust something with your eyes closed, it's got to be good for you. At Fresh Dairy, we spare no effort to bring you the purest milk, sourced from Ugandan farms. It's fresh and tasty so that you keep enjoying the good things in life. Fresh Dairy, simply good for you.
You're still watching the Fourth Estate on this 54th independence anniversary for this country, for Uganda, and we're asking the question, have we lived up to the dream of independence? Did we actually fight for it? Were we ready for it? Rita Achiro, I've received your message. Rita is concerned about this panel and says, not even a single woman to discuss independence. And she's very disappointed. I agree with you, Rita. We should have worked harder to find more diversified representation on the show. But the question is, even to you, to the women folk, have we answered, have we lived up to the expectations of independence that we achieved 54 years ago? And I should be expecting you to give us a call and share with us your views. Gentlemen, I don't know who to put this question to, but we're all here to discuss.
I'd like to respond to Kashum.
Yes. Number one is on the political front, we saw what happened. One opposition party was allowed to celebrate, another wasn't allowed to celebrate. Kizza Besigye was arrested and taken to Nagalama. The Lord Mayor and Sewanyana, the MP for Machindye East, were I think were also briefly detained. Others were receiving medals in Luka. That's the political context in which we're having this commemoration.
Even news to me that
whatever you call it.
Buzz, news.
Yeah, they were held. I don't know if they were released in the evening as normally happens. But let me come back to you. The Rosary sub-region in particular has been a center of skirmishes. He started us off very well to tell us what Obote outlined as the expectation, the dream that you're asking about of independence when we received it in 1962. A united country, a cohesive country. In 1986, we received the 10-point program officially after the Bush War, and that famous fundamental change speech from President Yoweri Museveni. President Yoweri Museveni was presiding over today's celebrations, national celebrations in Luka. And what we're talking about is, have we achieved the self-sustaining integrated economy? Have we achieved the aspiration of a united country? When we see a fight between Adjumani and Amuru over a border, which actually leads sometimes today. Have we achieved that sense of unity when Obudingia Wawamba and Owusinga Rwenzururu at loggerheads with each other, and when we had fights between Rwenzururu and Toro Kingdom? Have we achieved that? If you have situations here in Buganda between Banyala and Baganda, what exactly?
By the way, I can give some small historical background to that. In 1961, just on the eve of independence, the British had realized that disunity and disharmony in Uganda, and they set up a commission. It was called Uganda Relationships Commission, popularly known as the Munster Report because it was headed by Munster. And it pointed out all these skirmishes among different communities in Uganda. So whether it was the Rwenzori question, whether it was the Buganda versus the rest of Uganda, Buganda versus Toro, the Sabini versus the Bajisu, all those actually are documented in the Munster report. And therefore, at least they left us a document spelling out the challenges of disharmony that we were facing. Why we have not addressed them since 1962 is actually a challenge to us, that we did not even take advantage of the Munster report. And I wish somebody could now resurrect it, and we look at it and we say, Munster gave us this foundation, why haven't we addressed them?
There's a gentleman, an elder actually, who's been very generous. He shared with me his copy of the Munster report. So I've been reading through sections of that Munster report, and what they found at that time, the Bunyoro Uganda question, the investigations on those lost counties, and the interactions. I've been reading sections of that report. So I agree with you, the report exists. We know that it exists. Why haven't we fixed the issue?
Now, to take you back to how the Bakonzo and Wamba disagreed with the Toro Kingdom, it was not basically because of tribal sentiments. It was because of governance issues. Because the late Isaiah Mukirania, Kawamara and his colleagues thought they were not really being given enough platform to participate in the governance of the Toro Kingdom, the Toro Kingdom affairs as it was. So they decided actually to march out in protest, not to go up in arms, but to march out in protest, and this was an impasse that was not really resolved. I believe that if those issues that they raised, the governance issues of participatory democracy, inclusion of other tribes that belong to the Toro Kingdom, until now, probably there would be no disagreement.
Now you sit in Parliament. What does it say? What has changed between that time and today?
Now,
at a broader national level, what has changed?
What has changed is that we are having new cultural institutions emerging, and there is a lot of suspicion that these are actually state-engineered, whereby the government has interest in making sure that they keep bringing up different cultural institutions and they go at loggerheads with each other, because I can say they are trying to use the principle of divide and rule. If I put you back to history, in 1998, when His Majesty Charles Wesley Mumbere returned from the US, he was welcomed, and at that time, if you're to recall, the newspaper headlines would read, "The King of Vakonzo Bamba." We were together with the late Vambalira and these other members from Bundubuju. And then, as that unity was trying to build up, a new idea emanated, and they thought that probably if the Vamba can secede from that unity, it would be another way of breaking that unity that was being built up.
Who developed that idea?
Of course, all of a sudden, we heard that government had retired the Omdingia from the army, and actually, they promoted him after retirement, and he was installed as the king of the Vamba. And before we knew it, there was an embargo on Charles Wesley Mumbere, His Majesty, not to cross over to some parts of the Renzururu Kingdom.
Looking at you're looking at a very what would you say? You're looking at a small conflict in a larger entity called Uganda. The question is, 54 years later, if we identify ourselves as Bamba, as Bakonjo, if you go to Bundubujo, you find there are also other subdivisions that exist in there. You come back to the national level. What does it say about us as a country? 54 years on, what does this mean? That's the bigger question.
Actually, the trend is not even about to change, because, as my colleague said, you have Devanyala. You know, they keep coming, mushrooming, and in the end, we are not even operating under a clear policy that is guiding, first of all, the restoration and also the creation of new cultural institutions. Now, as we are operating under this vague situation without a policy, you realize that the mode of operation of these cultural institutions is actually not clear-headed, and every time there is a problem, then they run to one person.
Okay.
I believe it's a systematic way of bringing patronage. And I know behind the back of the initiator of this whole setup is that I'm going to put people who have a big following, the cultural leaders, who are going to become, I would call them pseudo campaign agents.
Mm-hmm. I
I
don't know. Ivan, isn't that a narrow way to look at the problem of a 54-year-old country called Uganda?
Maybe I agree with you. And specifically that, with due respect to Mr. Frank Gashumba, I think I want to disassociate myself from what the professor called a defeatist attitude. Because it doesn't, one, it's not even entirely accurate that if you even brought the whites back to Uganda to govern us, things would be better. Because in any case, most of the anecdotal evidence that is given of a Uganda that worked during colonial times can also be contrasted with the fact that you had hospitals, you had schools, you had what appeared as functioning social services essentially built to serve colonial interests. You don't, for example, have in colonial history a working hospital in Karamoja. It's not by accident that the best schools, the best hospitals were within the areas of access to the colonialists and their families. So it's essentially selfish interest. And I think you have Ethiopia, for example. As we speak now, there's a state of emergency in Ethiopia because of the subjugation of the Oromo people. Ethiopia was never colonized. The same is true with Liberia. They have the same challenges that we speak of today. And essentially, even countries like Ghana, Botswana, which are hailed, at least by Western standards, as the paragons of democracy and better governance. I was in Ghana recently, and you watch their TV stations, you listen to the radio stations, you speak to the intellectuals there, you speak to journalists, you speak to lawyers. They have the kind of conversations we're having now in this country. The issue then is there is no one size fits all solution to governance, and to narrow it that we fail to govern ourselves is not entirely accurate. Because I think for me, what we have are challenges in any other society. The discussion then should be how do we address those challenges? Because centuries after independence, the Americans are still having a bitter contestation about black versus white.
We can't be comfortable with where we are as a country, and to sit here as intellectuals and try to analyze this is to try and say what went wrong, where did it go wrong, how does it get fixed. I'll give you a minute to Frank and Ndebesa.
He talked about Karamoja, that there was nothing like a hospital in Karamoja. What's in Karamoja now?
Built by your colonial
No, I'm asking you, what's in Karamoja now? 54 years of independence. Tell me one functioning institution in Uganda. One.
You have NTV here?
NTV? Who owns NTV?
It's Kenyan.
Who owns
it's
NTV?
Run by Ugandans.
Who owns NTV? Why are we not on UBC? Who watches UBC?
But Frank, you're a businessman.
I'm telling you this.
Would you be, as a businessman, be concerned about who owns what or what service it delivers? Because that's a contradiction. As a businessman, you should be looking to expand your horizons beyond the borders of this country, having global impact.
I'm asking. He talks of NTV.
Yes. You have a functioning army?
No. In what?
You have a functioning army?
The arms we are using, are they manufactured in Uganda? Even the walkie-talkies we are using, CIA can monitor them. The independence we are talking about, these are serious matters.
For you, what would independence mean?
To me, independence means self-sustaining yourself. We're not doing it. My brother talks about...
There's no country in the world, Frank, that is self-sustaining, is using everything that it manufactures or produces.
Let's
there isn't a single country in the world.
Okay, it's not there, but there are countries that you are sure that 80% of what they are using, they are.
Give me an example.
US.
But even from the head of state's own words, they have said Uganda is a supermarket economy.
Let me add it to my brother Ivan. You know, when we sit on these TV stations, sometimes we tend not to tell the truth. Ivan, deep in you know what we are going through. We are not independent.
Absolutely, and that's what I'm saying. It's important for us to have an honest, serious discussion about the challenges that we have and how.
The moment you hear society is talking of tribes, Baganda, Bagisu, Bamba, that's a backward society. We've intermarried. You can no longer find a typical Muganda or a typical Munyankore. But the moment you hear, I'm a Mwamba, I'm a Munyankore, Munyarwanda.
What does that say about the United States that classifies people? They're going through an election, and it's Latinas, African Americans, the Jewish community.
But at the end of the day, it's even, I think it's even, they can even take you to court in the US if you say, Charles, you are as dark as what?
Okay.
But if I can take you...
I'm afraid, Davis, I'm going to hold, to request you to hold your thoughts and you come out of the room because we've overshot our time. But Frank, just as we take the break, I have seen a very expanded and good-looking hospital in Moroto. I was there recently, and they have largely expanded the hospital there. There's a functional hospital in Moroto, and it's a huge government facility there. But we'll discuss the details.
Have you seen the one of cases?
How was it financed? From whose money? Is it from local tax revenue?
Can we come back to this after short commercial break?
The Chinese here.
Fear no stain. Nomi loves clothes, and clothes love Nomi.
Program Guide.
Welcome to this last segment of the Fourth Estate, featuring Frank Gashumba. He's a businessman and social critic, or commentator, if you want to call him that. Mwambusi Ndebesa is a historian and lecturer at Makerere University. Ivan Okuda is the youngest Ugandan, 22 years. He'll be making 23 years. And as we mark 54 years of independence, or we celebrated 54 years of independence as a country, what does it mean for people like Ivan Okuda, who's a journalist and a law student? And Centenary Robert is also a fairly young man, first time in Parliament representing Kasese municipality. We're discussing Uganda at 54. Have we lived up to expectations? Ndebesa.
I want to make some quick response on whether we should have got independence or not, or whether we should invite the colonialists to come back. I want to submit that that would be defeatism, because it is like saying that when you are still living with your parents or your father in the same house and you are somehow comfortable, that when you get married you may not think of going out of his house, because getting out actually is going to bring challenges to you. So you get out, but then you have to reflect on these challenges and address them. On the question as to whether the economy is owned by foreigners and foreign capital, to a certain extent you cannot have that autarky, they call it. But the question I have, how I would address that question, is to address the issue of policy ownership. You see, you could have this foreign capital come here, but you don't also have a liberalized capital account, that every money made here goes out. You can also impose a policy of having local content on the industries. You can impose performance. You can have performance requirement for anybody who invests here, such that the policy will guide how foreign capital will operate in the same country. On the question of values, we have not had consensus values in this country, and unfortunately I don't see us working towards evolving consensus values, among which there should be tolerance of different sectors of Ugandans. There are still problems which are structural, such as identity politics, and we are going to have identity politics for some time, but then there is need to be a conscious effort to address that, those identity politics, tribe, religion, and whatever, but only if we all know or accept and acknowledge that Uganda is a joint project, that nobody has a monopoly of ideas in Uganda, such that we do have a national dialogue at which we shall thrust out all these things that are affecting our national integration and evolve a national consensus or consensus values.
Is there a problem, Mr. Ndebesa, on the way we think about this, even at an individual level? Is there a problem about the way we think about our place in society, then as a people, in this in this globalized world?
You see, the challenge is that we started off on a bad foundation in our politics, where politics seems to be just manipulating society, in the Trumpian language, to be smart. Smart meaning manipulating your colleagues and taking advantage of having state power and disorganizing others, rather than using that state power in order to create harmony. And you see most of our Independence Day celebrations or commemorations speeches, hardly anything is talked about harmonizing society by one way of identifying and acknowledging that others should also be tolerated. Instead of saying, we shall crush you, we shall eliminate you, we shall do this and this, we need to have a national conference at which we shall all have harmonized minds, and in that national conference, no group, no party, no individual should be taking advantage of that national conference in order to consolidate his or her power, rather than to give way, and the others also give way, and we all share and evolve a national consensus which will guide our future. Short of that, we are prone to disintegration. And you know, we are in the Great Lakes region, which is prone to disintegration. You can see Sudan, you can see what is happening in Congo, what is happening in Burundi, anything it can happen here, because I don't see a national consensus of values that have emerged to address those issues that the Muster report identified in 1961.
They still exist.
And they still exist. And it seems as if people have taken them for granted, and that is why the likes of Gashumba and others, he is not alone, are so frustrated with independence to the extent that they wish it could also go away. Rather than wishing it to go away, we had better sit back, and none, no Ugandan, no party, no group should think they have the monopoly of the way forward.
Okay. Frank, you wanted to come?
Yeah, but Professor, don't even think of a conference in Uganda now. President Museveni thrives in such a way. The more you divided you are, that's the most wonderful day for him. He likes it, and it's deliberate. Divide Uganda, divide Konjo, divide Gisu. That's it, it's deliberate.
So how can citizens force him to go to
Time is coming. Time is coming. I can assure you. Time is coming.
Actually,
let me give you an example. Let me give you a simple example. You said it's today, 54 years of independence. And out of the 54 years, 34 for NRM or 30?
I think 55%.
And who has been running this country? General Yoweri Museveni. The truth of the matter is, to me, Charles, you're a certified journalist. Go on the streets of Kampala, go in Masako, go in Mwende, and ask Ugandans whom they prefer. They will tell you, you know what? Let the white man come back to this country. Why? Because there were functioning hospitals, good roads. The same road the Queen of England used in 1952 coming to Uganda, it's the same road she used it coming here in 2007. That's what we're talking about.
How do you mean?
The quality.
There's nothing you can see. There's nothing.
But if
to me, actually, Africans.
Yes, Ivan.
To me,
agree with me.
We need to even be able to debunk the Gashumba argument, because it fits into public opinion, and it's dangerous for this country.
It is
and society. When you say the white man should actually come back, the question some people have asked is, did the white man actually live? In the context of not just globalization,
officially,
but neocolonialism. The question is, did the white man actually live?
Now, who is
because there's a lot of scholarly work by eminent scholars, for example, on the question of
and who are those eminent scholars? Who
and how that manifests.
Can you name them?
So for us to even take that, that is not helpful. But Charles, for me,
you're talking about scholars, and I'm asking Ndebesa, you do research. Okay, you've been doing research since the white man left. Why should we be referring to the Munster Commission report 54 years later? Have we been unable to produce our own research?
No, there are very many. They are there. People have been producing them. I was giving you, we are talking about independence, so I was giving you a basis or a baseline from where to begin, because every research must have a baseline.
Thank you.
Otherwise, there are very many reports.
Let me
go to Aristotle, you'll find
I haven't concluded.
And I think that's for me the challenge we've had really. I was reading an interesting paper by the Dar es Salaam debate. I'm sure Mwalimu is familiar with this, with the likes of Professor Mamdan.
I'm actually a graduate of Dar es Salaam.
Yes, the University of Dar es Salaam debates. And the question one time that was asked at the University of Dar es Salaam was, who is Uganda's enemy? Is it Idi Amin? That was the 1970s. And there seemed to be consensus that what is happening in Uganda, and just like in most post-colonial African states, is you have a transfer of power. You simply have change of face, and not essentially the change of substance. And I think for me, it's important for us to ask and try to answer the question, how do we actually have change in substance? Because it's very easy for Frank Ashumba to come and say the kind of things he's saying, but what would happen if you gave him a public office tomorrow?
And the other question,
because when we just the colonialists, and we wanted to self-govern, and then in came Obote, then he was kicked out, in came Amin was kicked out, in came Obote back was kicked out, you have Museveni now, you kick him out.
Ivan, why do Ugandans cry to South Africa every day?
Hold it, Frank, for a moment. Centenary, the same question. To define the problem of the country as the person who holds power, isn't that a problem? Ngugi wa Thiong'o wrote a book and titled Decolonizing the Mind. Do we have a problem? Because if you raise this same argument here, would you tell the Americans that they didn't fight a war of liberation and therefore they were better off with their British overlords?
But they fought the British.
Yes, they fought the British. For Ugandans at 54 years, and for each of us I mean everybody watching the show now, the question will be asking, where do I stand as an individual on this independence project? And how do I fit? And how do we put together everyone else to think independence means something at an individual level, at a community level, and at a national level?
Yes. Now, right now we are trying to compare the situation as it was back then when we were still under colonial rule, and now when we have self-governance, in a situation where Uganda has, apart from transitioning power from the colonialists to the Ugandans, which is the only peaceful moment we have ever had in the history of this country to transfer power without a bullet, we have been having a history of forceful removal of leaders. And I can even see the trend that we are taking now. Yes. We are moving towards the situation where we need to again tailor our constitution to suit somebody's whetted appetite to stay in power. So that means even the flicker of hope that we had of transiting from one regime to another peacefully is increasingly being lost. You can witness this from the heavy military and police deployment on the streets of Kampala and in the periphery. They are not there to fight an external enemy, but to demystify Ugandans who are discontent in the governance that we are having now.
So the problem of independence is the governance problem.
Yes, the citizens are playing their role of trying to check and balance.
Are they?
Yes, but as they are trying to exercise their right to check the government on its excesses,
Frank, you'll indulge me. I need to listen
and
to
army descending on
I need to listen to what our viewers have to say about the show and about the topic that we're discussing tonight. Can I have some callers? Hello? Hello? Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from? Keep your question or comment brief.
My name is Robert Akol.
Yes, Robert. Go ahead.
I'm calling from Makerere.
Sure. Go ahead.
The biggest challenge we have in Uganda is that people lack secrecy. Because every time to execute, they know the challenges. All the guys seated in the studio know the challenges, but they hide.
What is the challenge? Give us your take on the topic. What's the challenge?
Lack of secrecy. Lack of secrecy.
Secrecy. What do you mean?
Because all the guys you're seated now with, when they move outside of that studio, they will not reveal whatever ideas they have, all that we need to change the governance. They will not reveal to the sitting government. The guy, President Museveni,
Thank you. I'm not. I understand what
And he's not
Akol is talking about.
too secretive even.
Yes.
He's on phone and he's not even winning.
Hello, we have another caller. Hello. Hello.
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir.
My name is Edward.
Yes, Edward.
I'm calling you from Uganda.
Yes, please.
Yes, I just wanted to ask, what is the difference between the preventive arrests which were introduced during the colonial time, the one which the government is using these days for the opposition leaders?
Okay. Thank you. Do you have another caller? Hello? Hello?
Hello, good evening.
Good evening, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
My name is Kule, I'm calling from Bara.
Yes, please.
I wish to agree with Mr. Frank Ashumba when he talks about there's no sign of independence in the country.
Yes, please.
Today, being an Independence Day, we drove from Bara who had a tour to Kasese. But unfortunately, you move from Bara and you cannot find any kind of group of people sitting anywhere. We took the country road. We only found a group for a few people in the country trying to celebrate, but it was just a small gathering. So what is this supposed to mean to Uganda?
But beyond the celebration, Kule, beyond the celebration.
Sorry?
Beyond the celebration, do you as a Ugandan feel that independence makes any meaning? Has it, have we lived that expectation?
It means that people must be motivated and they should feel the reason as to why they are independent.
Okay.
You understand my point?
Sure, I think I do.
Because they don't feel independent, they are not motivated. So they
Thank you very much.
They go to their own things. In other words, they are not. There is no motivation at all.
Okay. Thank you for your opinion. Do we have another caller? Hello? Hello?
Hello, Judge.
Yes, sir. Your name and where you're calling from?
This is Sam calling from Kampala.
Yes, Sam. Go right ahead.
Actually, there's one big problem in Africa. And the problem was even mentioned by the current leader, that overstaying in power. Even if someone is messing up the country, they will never acknowledge that really things have refused. They hang on, not until they force the citizens to push them away. I think you can even see the entire continent. People are, the constitution is, people are hanging on, the man, like in Congo, it is 2 terms, they are finished, but the is also playing around with the citizens.
Okay, Sam.
So, yeah.
Thank you.
So, that is a big problem, Charles.
Okay.
We are staying in power.
Thank you. We'll have a response to that with some facts. Do we have another caller? Hello? Hello? I think we lost that one. Do we have another caller? Hello? Hello? Yes, please.
No, the problem is...
Your name, sir? Your name and where you're calling from?
I'm called Mohammed.
Yes, Mohammed.
The problem with our country is one. We fail to differentiate between state sovereignty and individual independence. So, some people talk about national independence as if they are comparing it to individual independence.
Okay, I think that's an interesting thing. Let's bring the discussion back here, and I want to start with Ndebesa. In the East African community, it's only this country that has had at least 8 presidents since independence.
Actually, they are not 8. They are more than 8. Some we don't know them.
How do you mean?
What I mean is that, for example, when there was a military commission here, under Mwanga as the chairman and the Museveni as the vice chairman, they put up a presidium or something like that of 3 people.
The one that had...
there was Nyamuchoncho, there was War, and somebody else. And so those were presidents because they could sign documents officially. So you can see we don't even know how many presidents we have had, but continue with your point.
Yes. if you look at that number, responding actually to Sam's question, I think he's the one. No. Yes, Sam was talking about the problem of people staying in power for too long. Kenya has had 4 now, I think it's about its fourth. Same about Tanzania. Uganda has had a lot more.
And Burundi has killed many, and so
yes.
is Rwanda.
Yes. So is it a question of length of stay in power? Is it a question of how that power is utilized? What is it?
Let me approach it broadly. Some of these challenges or problems we are talking about are structural, because that's why we have commonality in the whole of Africa, because we have similar structures. Others are ideational, that is, they are ideas. We have been talking about mindsets and ideas and ideology and force, whatever the case may be. But the third factor is agential, that is agents. Surely the agents, now let me talk about the agents, because we don't have time to talk about the structures and the ideas. Yeah, the agents that we have had in Uganda at the helm of power have not given way, have not given space for the others to come in. I think it was Obote, he was not giving way. Idi Amin was also like president. Museveni is more or less left president. So those individuals as agents could also play a role in the transformation of society. But unless and until those agents at the helm of power think about sharing power and handing over power peacefully and become statesmen, so that we know that our future is predictable, our future is certain. The challenge we have is that in our politics is that the future is not certain. We are actually moving in a political fog, and like when you are driving in this natural fog, you are liable to an accident.
Cause an accident. So
we can easily have a political accident when we continue in this political fog where the future is not certain. Well, so there are structural problems, there are ideational problems, there are agential problems, but we need also to handle the agential problems as simultaneously with structural and ideational problems.
Centenary, what needs to be done? Is it the individual, is it the holders of power to live, to experience this idea of independence? What does it take?
I think, first of all, it takes the political will from the individuals to appreciate the fact that Uganda is for all of us. We need to put in place policies that are favorable to Ugandans, pro-people, and we need to respect those policies. That is the first platform we need to create, so that Ugandans can be able to enjoy their country without any fear or favor. Actually, the mindset of Ugandans now has shifted from patriotism to vandalism. Government resources are the most vandalized now than before. Today, when somebody is going to vandalize something, if I say this belongs to government, they'll say, okay, this is ours, let me also get my fair share of it. You know, that's the culture we have created. Now, how does it come? The leadership, which takes the custodial role of governance of this country, itself has not set a good example for the citizenry. So whenever the citizenry have an opportunity to get back at the leadership, and they have grabbed this and that, then no one apparently is having the moral authority to lash out at the citizenry.
Okay.
Actually, there is a breakdown of the systems.
And
the judiciary...
And make just a quick comment. The attitudes we have are not even in favor of independence. An independent-minded person in Uganda seems to be a criminal. And in fact, Mr. Moderator, I heard a rumor, I'm saying a rumor so you don't have to defend yourself, that you were desiring to get a job somewhere in the public sector, and because you are independent-minded, you were denied, or you were discouraged from continuing because you are independent-minded. So to be independent-minded in Uganda now can deny you a job or a promotion in the public service.
Professor,
that means you are even against independence.
No, Professor, you're not alone. No. He's not even alone. The moment you are independent
Frank,
in this country...
I can speak for myself.
No, there is a breakdown in the
you don't have to defend yourself. I said it was a rumor.
We leave it at that. It's a rumor. I haven't been looking for a job.
Just supplementing what the professor was saying.
Yes.
Many companies are not willing to associate with us.
With you.
The moment you are independent, you have a function, you have an event. No serious company would even want to sponsor your event. because Gashumba is independent. Gashumba bashes government. I don't bash government. I bash the leadership.
Well, you are independent.
Yes, yes.
And you said there is no independence in 54 years, but you're independent.
Yes, I'm independent as a person, but what I'm
Yes.
talking about, the moment they realize Charles, he's an independent journalist. Trust me, they won't even allow you to moderate a show. You know what I'm talking about?
In the public sector.
They can't.
I'm listening to what you're saying.
There is a company, I won't even mention it on TV here. They were willing to support our activities in Uganda. They said, if there was a way, Sisimuka Uganda and Gashumba would hide their face.
And then they would sponsor you.
Yes. Do you know why? You're independent. The way you see it, that's the way you present it.
So doesn't that present a contradiction? We are independent but not independent.
No, you are saying some individuals are independent.
Yes.
But
How
it is
do you
being
move that?
discouraged when you are independent. You are looked at negatively.
How do you move that independence to reflect the desires and aspirations of a country and to achieve real independence? You'll have the last word.
I think, in my humble view, we need to struggle, and continuously fight for a society, and specifically a country that serves the interests of the citizenry. Because the colonial state served the interests of the colonialists.
And
the post-colonial, the post-colonial
and the present African
Ugandan
leaders
state for the last 54 years has served the interests of the presidents that have served. So you have a country for the last 30 years that's been essentially serving the interests of family, friends, and relatives. So how we can be able to change that, I think, remains for people like Mwalimu Mwambucha and Derisa to continuously.
We have to be citizens and not subjects.
Gentlemen, we need to get
People
out of here.
know the meaning of that word, being a citizen.
Gentlemen, we need to get out of here, and I'll have my take as we get out of the show. That being individuals can choose the side of where they want to be citizens or subjects. Now, how they fight to get that is what we can have a debate about. But I think that the basic thing is for individuals, for Ugandans, to first embrace that independence within themselves and not think they are subservient, and then fight to defend that space. Because you can't defend space, you don't think you rightly hold. You can't. If you think you're a subject, you'll continue thinking and behaving like a subject. If you think you are a citizen, you'll demand for your space in that system.
But also practice what you preach.
Yes, and practice what you preach, of course, exactly. Our time is out, we need to get out of here. Thank you very much. Centenary Robert, Member of Parliament, Kasese Municipality. He belongs to the Forum for Democratic Change. Ivan Okuda, student at Makerere University, journalist with the Daily Monitor. Mwambucha Ndebesa, lecturer at Makerere University and historian. And Frank Gashumba, social critic and businessman. Our time is out. Thank you very much to all our viewers for joining us tonight, and please do keep tuned in to NTV. And thank you very much to the production crew that stays up late to deliver this show to you. Have a good night.